Hi everyone. The article I'm reviewing is Metadata for All, Descriptive Standards and Metadata Sharing Across Libraries, Archives, and Museums. The article presents an overview of metadata standards in libraries, archives, and museums, provides a brief history of the development of these standards, and discusses recent trends in each community. It also stresses the challenges of integrating digital content from these various cultural heritage organizations. The authors argue that applying metadata standards, especially in data content, by material type as opposed to community affiliation, would result in greater data interoperability within the cultural heritage community as a whole. There are 4 key metadata concepts that are explained in the article. And to better explain these concepts, the authors compared a record of information to a case of bottles being labeled, filled, stored, and delivered. So the first concept are data fields or structure, which is named units of information. These are also often called elements. And examples would be creator and title. And these were compared to bottles waiting to be filled. The second concept is data content and values, which is the actual information stored in the data fields. For example, Picasso or Guernica. And this establishes what goes into the bottle. And this would be where thesauri and controlled vocabularies are used. The third one is data format, which is the particular encoding of information contained within a file, for example, XML. And this was likened to the crate in which the bottles are stored and shipped. And finally, there's data exchange, which is the particular protocol used to share a collection of records. For example, the Open Archives Initiative Protocol for metadata harvesting makes collections encoded in XML available for harvest by aggregators. And so this was described as the delivery person who's delivering the crate of bottles. This is a table showing primary metadata standards which have historically been based on the type of institution that created them. So you see the table's divided up by institution, museum, library, and archive. For museums, the primary data structure is CDWA, or Categories for Description of Works of Art. For data content, it's CCO, Cataloging Cultural Objects. The data format is XML, or Extensible Markup Language, and the data exchange is OAI, Open Archives Initiative. For libraries, data structure is MARC, Machine Readable Cataloging. The data content is AARC2, Anglo-American Cataloging Rules, and RDA, Resource Description and Access, which is what it's moving to. The standard for data format is XML, and for data exchange is OAI. And then for archives, the data structure standard is EAD, or Encoded Archival Description. For data content, it's DAX, or Describing Archives, a content standard. And then again for data format, XML, and data exchange, OAI. So at this point in the article, the authors present a historic overview on the development of these standards in each of the 3 communities. I'm not going to go into that, but I will say that it's an interesting discussion and provides the reader with some background on the evolution of the standards. The important takeaway from this discussion is that each community worked independently to develop their metadata standards. And then finally in the article, the authors discuss recent trends in each of the 3 communities. So in the library community, there is intense debate over user-friendly cataloging and access systems, which we've discussed in class. Some of the things we've talked about have been tagging in library catalogs and discovery layers as a means to facilitate searching for users. There's also a shift from local discovery systems to networked systems with the capacity to return local results, like OCLC's WMS, which we've discussed in class as well. In the archival community, there are significant backlogs of undescribed collections, which indicates the need for more efficient practices within established standards. Some people in the community argue that emphasis should be placed on achieving basic physical and intellectual control over all collections, as opposed to the perfect archiving of a limited number of objects or collections. And in the museum community, there's been more openness to experimenting with user-contributed content like folksonomies and crowd sharing as an affordable means to increase user access. The museum community is concerned with ways to share digital descriptions and images, both within the organization as well as with the global community. And museums have been combining data structure and content standards with the OAI data exchange standard to allow for effective sharing and aggregating of digital collections. And finally, in the museum community has been exploring what has been referred to as the network effect. And this is the idea that an institution can broaden its visibility and user base through capitalization of the internet, basically. And how this works is the museum publishes digital descriptions and images online using OAI, which allows for their reaggregation in other online digital collections. And then, when an object is discovered at one of these other sites, the user is redirected to the original museum collection through an embedded link. So this effectively increases the museum's user population. These are the biggest takeaways, in my opinion, from the article. First of all, ultimately the success of these standards, whether they are developed in the library, archival, or museum community, is measured by how well they facilitate access to the end user. Also, although libraries, archives, and museums inhabit somewhat separate worlds, the format of the materials in their collections often overlap. Therefore, the cultural heritage community as a whole needs to come together and agree on material-specific standards that are not limited to a particular community. So, as the authors say at the end of the article, standards should be categorized by material culture, bibliographic, and archival instead of by museum, library, and archive. And the authors argue that this will lead to greater data interoperability within the cultural heritage community, which will ultimately result in increased user access. So my questions are, do you agree that this is necessary to ensure a future of global access to cultural heritage materials? Do you think this type of collaboration or agreement is possible among the various types of cultural heritage institutions, since they have historically worked in separate realms? And finally, do you think that progress has been made in this respect since the article was published in 2007? Thanks for listening, and I hope this has been helpful. Okay, bye.